Thank you. Appreciate that. That item has been moved to consent agenda, and now we'll move back to item number 5, which was the Indian Bayou discussion.
Yes, Ms. Albrecht's here. I believe she has a presentation. And then we also, I believe Mr. Furman may have some comments after she finishes.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Great. Thank you. Could I ask for the lights to be turned down since we have all these nice windows? I think it'll make for a better presentation. Thank you. So I'm Barbara Albrecht, and I feel the need to share with you that I am a marine biologist. I am an ecologist. I have a background in aquatic toxicology, and I look at landscapes as holistic environments. And so I am looking at Indian Bayou as a whole system. This morning I've heard a lot of discussions about stormwater, about flooding. A lot of decisions are being made in areas where people, I think, are lacking a little bit of expertise. Basically, groundwater hydrology would be wonderful to bring to the forefront. That is not exactly my intent, but it'll overlap a little bit with Indian Bayou. So let me see if I can just kind of, wait, Chairman, are you leaving, or are you just stretching your back? Okay, good. Glad to hear it, because I've been very patient. Okay, I just did by just pointing. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Indian Bayou is a beautiful system, and we have a current condition that's very different than what it once was. We've identified what the stressor is. We have identified what some of the sources are. I've come up with a remedy that I think would be very inexpensive in the long run, and will actually give you a good return on investment for all you economic people. And the goal, which for me is restoring a functioning ecosystem. All right. Where is Indian Bayou? Indian Bayou is part of the Escambia Bay watershed. When you are crossing over the interstate, heading east, it is just south of the interstate as you enter Santa Rosa County. Indian Bayou here is portrayed, does this have a pointer? I'm sorry. Nope. Okay. Okay, no pointer. What I will do is go over here and show you part of the concern that we have. Indian Bayou was accidentally fragmented by the siting of the interstate in the 70s. So without really understanding that these wetland systems are part of a larger process, when we put in the interstate, we cut off a section of it. So it'd be like cutting off your arm, if you will. All right, this is a 1955 aerial view of what our systems used to look like. So in the upper left-hand corner next to where the numbers 55 are, that is actually Mulat Bayou. And you can see Mulat Bayou was fed by some feeder streams that almost came out south of what is today the interstate. But let me draw your attention to the right, to the larger area, which is Indian Bayou. And again, I'm going to go to your screen. This is Indian Bayou at the southern end of the system. It was coming as close This is a hydrologic map that shows how water drains from an area and where it goes. This is something that if you had for Holly by the Sea would really help you with your flooding issues, because it takes into account the groundwater, the surface water, and how items from the landscape drain. When we have rain like we have had this year, and we are at 60 inches, we are 7 months in, and we have an annual rainfall of 65 inches, we have super saturated our ground. Our groundwater table is coming up in the low-lying areas. What we've seen here is that with this amount of rain, that we are seeing more and more low-lying areas flooding. You can attest to that, Stephen, I know you can. So let me show you how the drainage is currently working on the northern side of the interstate where this section was chopped off by accident. Okay. Can you hear me? Yay. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. So on the northern side of the interstate, there are 2 drainage ditches that drain underneath the interstate into a box culvert that comes out to the east of Monterey Shores, which is a subdivision. Over on the rest of the whole Indian Bayou, you have a drainage area coming off a mitigation bank that comes into the main tributary that feeds the system. This is Indian Bayou. It's considered a tidal wetland system. These are parts, oh, I'm sorry that your IT system is different than mine, but parts of Indian Bayou are considered a salt marsh, so apologize for the typo. So here's basically the history of the stressor. When we planned the new interstate, we didn't know then what we know now. Now that we know, we have fragmented that system. Fast forward, DOT indicated that they were going to add a few more lanes to the interstate. In doing so, in that particular stretch of the reach, they needed to go to the median to remove the median for the 2 extra lanes. In doing so, and prior to the beginning of that work, somebody came along and cleared the drainage ditches, which were completely grown over by grasses. Those plants and grasses served as a filter to keep red clay on the north side of the interstate from getting into Indian Bayou on the south side. Those grasses, when they were cleared, opened the conveyance for water, and we found out that Indian Bayou has become a tidal system. With all the rain that we have, we are starting to see a difference in how this tidal area is happening. Santa Rosa County, Stephen Furman came to a meeting back in July of 2016 when we invited DOT and water management to sit down with homeowners. Homeowners were pretty upset because their bayou kept turning red every time it rained. The additional lanes are coming out of the median, which at the time served as a swale. I'm sorry, Mr. Robinson, a minute. Am I distracting you? You, Williamson, I'm sorry. You were having a conversation. Do you understand the issue here?
Please continue, Ms. Albrecht.
Okay. So with the interstate losing the central lanes, we're also starting to see more and more sedimentation. And we started checking where could that sedimentation be coming from. Sedimentation appears to be coming from San Juan Street, which is the northern border of the watershed. And with the continual maintenance and grading of that system, we're finding more and more of that red clay is getting into the drainage ditches. And with every rain event, those drainage ditches are being conveyed out into Indian Bayou. As that happens, we're seeing under the interstate, the view on the right is looking north towards the interstate, and you can see the ditches there. And this is looking south, going out towards the bayou. You can see that the red clay is being conveyed. Now, as we talk about this is what Indian Bayou looks like as the red clay is entering the system. This has been going on for over a year. This is becoming an increasingly difficult understanding of how this could still happen in 2017, because we know that turbidity is bad for water quality. We know that it actually lowers the value of the homeowner's property, so there is an issue along those lines. In the words of Commissioner Williamson, help me to understand why it would take over a year to have a meeting to discuss this and bring it to your attention when we're trying very hard to clean up our area waters. This seems like it would be the low-hanging fruit. Mr. Furman is saying how he doesn't have enough money or resources.
And of course, you're talking about that comment I made was referring to something completely different and not this issue.
I mean, I'm as frustrated as you are, sir, with trying to get some of the issues.
Just wanted to make sure on the record that the quote you were just attributing to me was not related to this presentation. It was a completely different conversation.
Right. And
Okay,
as I've been
thanks.
sitting here patiently as a citizen trying to get in front of you for my 5 minutes, yes, I might have heard a lot of things.
We're starting to lose power.
Sure.
Would you use this?
I'd be happy to. Okay, so let's continue. This is sort of a overview of what we have lost in habitat for the last about 40, 50, 60 years. And you'll see that we have salt marshes that we've lost from the 1950s and tidal wetland areas that we have lost. And I think most of you have recently just agreed that we were interested in passing the estuary program as an opportunity to try to benefit our area waters and habitat. And this particular this information is from a document that was put together by Water Management District, because all over the state of Florida, and much like the gentleman this morning that was talking about the issues happening with the other areas in South Santa Rosa County that are flooding, we live in a swamp. We have a lot of low-lying areas. We have a lot of issues, and we really need to consider retreating from our coastal areas so that we don't have impacts onto these seagrass beds. And we have our tidal wetlands and our salt marshes are the buffers between the upland system and the water. And if we can intercept turbidity and sediment before it enters our water, you won't have a lot of angry homeowners every time their bayou turns red. So when we have road work, and this is Escambia County, and Stephen, I thought it was great that you use these pictures for your presentation, but this is Escambia County, and we know that when you make an omelet, you have to crack a lot of eggs and make a mess. I get it. But DOT has they have a lot of knowledge in the area of best management practices, and they have not been attributing all those best management practices to all the road projects going on in this area. So here is winter of 2016, so this was last November. This is when we have traditionally low tides, dry times, and the creek is a rivulet. And the creek in 2015, before the work started, would have practically been grown over. But DOT sent their crews out, much like some of the projects that you guys have been talking about today, to clear the ditches, cut back the grasses, and when they did so, they inadvertently opened this. Now, the meeting that Stephen came to in July of 2016, he said, I've been grading San Juan for 50 years, right? And we've never had a problem, right? And now we have a problem. So automatically it's DOT's fault. And DOT was like, no, 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 it's the county's fault. Lots of finger pointing. Well, you know what? The problem is a number of things, moving factors, and the environment is not static. It's moving and balancing all the time. What we have here is by removing those grasses, you've reconnected the northern area, and now you have a water conveyance. What we found out was that the homeowners, actually, there was a 4-hour delay after a 2-inch rain event from the time that we started seeing the water coming through here, which indicates that it's tidally connected. So you've got a tidally connected wetland system that happens to have one conveyance under a bridge, and nobody is addressing the low-hanging fruit, which is San Juan. So let's talk about San Juan. San Juan Boulevard is 1 mile long, red clay. Nobody lives on it. You've got one house on the corner of 14th and San Juan that has access to a paved road. The rest of it should be returned to a wetland, which is what it is. You should consider taking this property off of the books and making it into a wetland system, perhaps a mitigation bank. There are several in this area interested. Do the right thing. Pick the low-hanging fruit. Return the system to what it is. There are no homes being developed in it. In fact, in front of this very same group, about 2.5 months ago, a homeowner that owns property there has been paying taxes, tried to give land back to you, and Mr. Gomillion, I believe you said, oh, we don't want it, it's swamp, it's wetland, we don't want it. Right. So let's just return the system so that it can do its job and function as designed by Mother Nature, by God, and please be the good shepherds and stewards of this environment. This is what it looked like in February and March of this year, San Juan. And Steve, I give you a hand up. You grade that road very well. This is what it looks like on the left, and this is what it could look like on the right. Okay? And I'm just asking, how do we get to that? You don't have to grade this road. You don't have to pave this road. Let's return it to a natural system. We talk about stormwater. We talk about ecosystem services. This system is serving a function because you have grasses, seagrasses in that system, Rupia maritima. You have terrapin turtles, which are going to be on the endangered species list, and you have a minnow, which will also, the salt marsh top minnow, eventually make it on the list. Do the right thing, and let's restore this system, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9, surplus property. Tony? Or do I need to go to our clerk? Oh, apologize. I didn't see anybody coming up. I apologize. Wallace, go right ahead.
Wallace Mahout, 5500 Cox Road, Milton, Florida. I was just wondering what's going to happen to Indian Bayou if you don't let that road revert to wetlands. Thank you.
I couldn't possibly speculate. I have no idea. I just make tall grass short. Yes?
Jack Bonney, 817 Dolphin Road. First of all, Dan, thank you for the flag. Got it in the right position. I know Steve gets Furman gets a lot of flack over grading that road. I give him some flack for grading that road. I will commend him. He's done a lot of good efforts in the county to try to keep red clay out of our waterways. He does, in this case, he's added grass along the banks and tried to slow down the erosion. But quite frankly, unless the property is done as suggested, it'll continue to put red clay into that creek that feeds into the bayou. So to me, it's a no-brainer. The first step would be for one of you commissioners, and Sam, I think it's in your district, would have to recommend that we stop maintenance on this property. We've done that before. Bob Cole did it and helped with Steve's suggestion when Steve, I think, was reporting Avis Whitfield on Haddock Road, which is a very similar road, red clay, feeding directly into Scambia Bay. And Steve's crew did a fantastic job. They came in, they put a layer of sand, sanded and capped the red clay, then put down grass seed, and it's grown. What you have today for the few trucks that go down that road, and it's mostly pickup trucks, and this road, quite frankly, is mostly pickup trucks, maybe 4 or 5, 6 a day. You end up with some ruts, old-timey looking road with some, grass and ruts, and it's very, very environmentally friendly. What Barbara is suggesting, it may take some time to do it, is to try to get the land, since it is wetlands, find ways to get grants to buy the land up and revert it back to a wetland area. Then you won't have a Holly by the Sea problem you'll be dealing with 10 years from now if it ever does get developed. I would highly recommend not developing. But I am requesting that you gentlemen please consider making a motion for a vote on Thursday to not maintain this road. If you're not familiar with it, go take a look at it, look at the traffic on it, do a traffic count. It really is destroying Indian Bayou, and Indian Bayou is feeding directly into the bay. And I will remind you that in the 80s, Tampa and the Pensacola Bay area had the same loss of seagrass, almost 70% loss of seagrass. Tampa is right now back to almost 100% seagrass, and they've been very diligent. And if you look at what's happening in Tampa with the fishermen coming, they love it. I mean, they're getting bombarded with tourists wanting to go fishing. Our area is not growing as a fishing capital like it once was, simply because the seagrasses are gone. And we've not recovered them. We've made basically no recovery since the 70s. So gentlemen, do this one thing. I mean, it's a simple step. Just do it. Second thing I'm going to ask is that I want to do a shout out to Becky Cato. She did a super job. She retired last month, as you know. There were efforts she did to keep red clay out of our bays. She working with the zoning board, came up with 2 changes. One, unbelievable, and it wasn't until 2014 that we had red clay was being allowed to be used as fill dirt on waterfront property in the entire county except for the island. Anybody on any of the bays, bayous, and over in your area, Commissioner Lynchard, could put red clay down as fill dirt. That was just unbelievable. Becky took that, made a code change. Now if you want red clay on your property, it's only for foundations, driveways, and has to be capped by concrete within 45 days. That was a great change. I mean, that's really been remarkable. The other thing that Becky did was come in with requirements for stormwater runoff and water filtering and sedimentation control. There's been a change to the land development code for that. So kudos to Becky. Wish her a happy retirement. If she's watching this, having fun with your grandkids, I mean, that's just super. But to the point, what we need is meetings on a regular basis between the DOT and Water Management and Stevens Group as a advertised public meeting so the public can come and hear the discussions about what's being done to meet the requirements that this county put in place. We've got code about how red clay should be handled. DOT is not following it. They're not following our own code in our own county. We meet with them, we talk with them, but we need to have public meetings that people can come to and hear what's being said and hear what's being done.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
And guys, I'm going to be probably being a little bit more strict on the talking time moving forward. It's It's 3:16 right now, and we still are not through the administrative committee. So I just want to let everybody know it has nothing to do with this presentation whatsoever. This is completely aside. Just we are where we are right now, and we need to move this along. So thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the comments. Commissioner Parker.
Just real quick, imagine when we go to doing this at nighttime. No. What are you gonna last? Roy, can you address, myself, Mr. Furman, and Tony Gomillion had a meeting with the Northwest Florida Water Management District last week, and I think there's, this may be a little speculation or I guess assumption, there may be I think a little squirming in the pants that they issued DOT this permit to do this work without requiring any sort of mitigation steps. They actually allowed them, kind of like you hear with the wetland bank, them to mitigate the damage over in Escambia County, but they could dump all they wanted on our side. And one of the conversation points was, could we close the road, like he talked about? And I'm wondering what would be the impact of that, because I was informed there could be a potential of the sort of like somebody mentioned the Burt Harris Act, that we're sort of taking the property if we close the road with those residential lots on the way. So could you speak to that? Because if it's just something simple, I mean, I'd be glad to.
Well, it's taking the property away from those property owners. How simple is that?
Yeah.
And if you take property under the Burt Harris Act, you have to pay for it.
Is like the gentleman suggested, as far as because me and Mr. Furman had mentioned a road to me, but he said it wasn't like this one, as far as I think it was kind of short or somewhere to going to nowhere. On this road, if we sand it and grass it, is that the same thing? I mean, is that?
It's a matter, the Burt Harris is actually a fairly complicated piece of legislation. It would require an appraisal before the regulation or the taking, and an appraisal after the regulation of the taking, and the county, if it's determined that it's an inordinate burden on that property owner, is responsible for paying the difference on the before and after. So would it be a total taking of all the property value down there? No. Would it be a substantial impairment of the property value? I would think so. And as far as valuing that amount, it's going to be a litigation process.
It's certainly something that's outside of the scope of what we had today. It was supposed to be a 5-minute presentation today to let us know of the situation. We've been made aware of the situation. If it's something that you would like to bring back up in another meeting to have a board action on, I kind of feel like we advertised to talk about and have the presentation. I certainly don't think that we advertised, nor were any property owners there prepared that we were going to take any type of action. So is there any further, anything else that we need as far as this meeting goes on this item?
Mr. Chairman,
Stephen, go
if
ahead.
I may, after the meeting last summer regarding the sediment going into the bayou, the Public Works Department did take immediate steps to, number one, quit hauling clay into the road. Any clay that we need to fix erosion on the road, we're mining from the sides of the road that's there. And we also installed best management practices, hay bales, silt fencing, and grassing in the immediate areas where we have culverts that cross under San Juan. And we are in the process of adding more grassing, and there is a slideshow, additional PowerPoint on here, but I didn't want to go into it due to just the length of the meeting. But, you know, we're prepared to continue fortifying the edges of the road with vegetation and maintaining the silt fencing and hay bales to do everything we can to keep the red color, the red sediment from San Juan from reaching these waterways.
And I don't want to make light of it. It is an issue that we want to make sure that, as has been said, we do have code on the books that, you know, we should be making sure this sediment is doing everything we can to make sure this sediment is not going into the bays and waterways that we have. So knowing that you're working on remedial action, that is an encouraging step. I just want to say I'm not prepared to take any further action on Thursday. I know that it was suggested. That's not something that I would feel comfortable with. I don't feel that that's a right step to take.
I guess I can ask for it to be put on the next set of meetings agenda just to discuss with the rest of the board. Unfortunately, they probably don't have the knowledge of it that maybe myself, or which I'm on the bottom end of Tony or Steven, just because, again, this is not in their district and I can't go to them and say, hey guys, this is a problem. It's why I'd asked you about presenting to the board. So I guess I'll ask them on the next set of meetings to maybe we can garner some information and come up with some possible alternatives, and that way they're maybe a little bit more prepared, I think is what he's saying. If I got you there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a discussion of Indian Bayou, and when I asked about it, I was told it was going to be a 5-minute presentation to kind of bring us up to speed on what's going on there. I certainly didn't anticipate that we were looking to take some kind of action to the extent of no longer using the road and impacting folks.
And I don't think we're anticipating taking action this week, but obviously it's an issue that's of concern to some of the residents down there and other people. It's impacting the quality of the water. This board has taken action and supported steps that would eliminate or reduce sediment runoff from red clay roads in the past. One of our restore projects is dirt road paving,
right.
primarily in the south end of the county. We're trying to, Stephen?
If I may add, San Juan was one of the roads, or is one of the roads on the restore list for paving.
Okay, so
The problem with paving San Juan Road is that you are investing money into an area that you probably will not offer services for development in the future. Would you really have septic tanks put in a wetland for people that might want to develop there? This is a tidal system, gentlemen. This is something that you didn't even realize you had in your backyard until DOT cleaned the swales. And now all of a sudden, you're considering a road. There's very few utilities back there. So is that a good return on your investment for a road? Or could it be a win-win that you recognize, oh, we have a jewel that we weren't aware of, and we can return this system, and you could be the first county in Florida to return an slightly impaired wetland system into a healthy functioning system. It's a different way of thinking if you're looking at it holistically. Now, if you're going to piecemeal it like you're doing with some of your other projects, you know, that's why Baskerville Donovan came to you with this $611 million or $600,000 project to look at their drainage. You're basically taking a wetland system, which is what Holly by the Sea is, and you're replumbing it. You're putting stormwater ponds in low-lying areas that were traditionally wetlands. You had a gentleman here this morning talking about drilling holes into a wetland system because it's probably filled up with red clay and now it's not perking. But in all reality, if you knew today what you didn't know 25, 35 years ago when it was being developed, you would have retreated. Thank you for your time. I'm glad I got to be a part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Albrecht. And just so you know, I'll bring it up at a later date to talk with the commissioners about, and we can dig in a little deeper on some of the financial impacts that I just quite frankly don't know. We'll talk about later that we really could substantiate. I mean, we'd almost, to do what you're talking about, have to start buying up the property, sort of like Holly by the Sea when they asked for the moratorium. And I think legally the only way we can get into saying you can't build is we're going to have to start buying the property, and then we're going to have to ask the folks. They've already come up here and said they don't want tax increases. So I don't know that that's an option to totally return it back to just its estuary state of the 50s. Just talking from today's, I mean, you know, we've got attorneys that tell us, hey, if you do this, you're going to cost us millions of dollars in lawsuits. But I will bring it back up for discussion. I don't want you to think that they don't care about it. I mean, we all saw it on the front page of the Press Gazette a couple of weeks ago. But I understand what Commissioner Williams is saying was he's not been given all the information on this to be prepared to talk about possible alternatives today, is always trying to say.
Well, I will quickly say my name is Judy Walker. I live at 2609 San Clemente in Monterey Shores. Our neighborhood has been, of about 30 homeowners, has been working on this since March of 2016 when we first started noticing the red water going through a little creek and into the bayou. And we spent a year trying to find out who to talk to. And we've talked to water management, we talked to DOT, we've talked to the construction company on the freeway, we've talked to Steve Furman. We just felt like we were getting a runaround. And so several neighbors started talking to the press. And so I will look to you, and we will look to you, Sam Parker, as our point of contact on this, because it does seem like the focus of the attention should be on San Juan Road, which is Santa Rosa County.
I'll just ask you, and I'll be prepared to say this publicly now and at a future meeting, that please reach out to your state representative as well, Jared Williamson, and I would ask you to bring him inclusive to future discussion. If we're going to talk about remedying it, even Northwest Florida Water Management District that issued the permit even acknowledges, and photos here from Stephen Furman, that DOT is a very large contributor right now, and we have no authority over them. And to say that could we possibly mitigate the damage, yes, we'll take that. But also, whether we're the minor, the major, or equal contributor, need to get the state involved. So I know we're the easy access because we're the county officials and we meet here a couple times a month, but need to get the state legislators on board with getting DOT.
And a large part of solving a problem is acknowledging a problem and defining it. And I think we're pretty close to defining it as a combination of the existence of a clay road in a wetland area, and then the way that all of the natural storm drainage developed and then was completely cleared away with the freeway construction. So there are multiple parties involved, but we do feel like that, and you may just be our target, but you have stepped up and answered some of our questions and brought it to the attention of the county commission. So we'll continue to look through you to you, and if you refer us to other people, we'll continue. We've done it for a year. We're not going to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree with Commissioner Lyncher. This board has been supportive of those measures, as have I. Whether it be calling in for seeing red clay being used on Navarre Beach and calling in and having that material removed because it's not supposed to be there per our code, whether it's supporting Becky Cato's initiatives or otherwise, I'm just not prepared to make a decision on Thursday without having additional information, and that's where I'm coming from. It's not that I'm not in support of these efforts or that I haven't been in the past, because I have. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm not the enemy here. All right. There's no action for Thursday. Commissioner Parker, I guess we'll be bringing this back at another time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you can go ahead, so it's documented, and put it down for the next set of meetings, just as an item of discussion.
Okay. I'm going to make sure that if there are any affected property owners, that we can in some way try to get notice to them so we can get as much feedback as possible in that area.
Brandy, could you make sure that you let the Press Gazette reporter that ran the article know about the upcoming agenda item? And then I would just urge you as the constituents, same way you would to me, to reach out to your state representative and ask them, you know, what you can do to get it resolved on the state interstate system there.
Thank you. Bottom line, hopefully we'll get that situation headed in the right direction. Number 9, surplus.